give you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high.
Hey everybody, welcome to Navel-Gazing Valley Indie Podcast. My name is Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. That's an online newspaper covering Ansonia, Derby, and Seymour. I'm recording this on Tuesday, December 14th. The holidays are quickly approaching. Christmas is almost here. Before I introduce my guest, I just want to get a little housekeeping out of the way and read a message from our sponsor, valleygivesback.org. It shouldn't be a surprise that when you pass away, none of your assets go with you. Whether or not you have a will, your assets will be distributed. Sometimes not how you would like it. Why not make a plan? Your plan can include your favorite relatives, friends, and a nonprofit organization or two supporting causes you care about. Ask a trusted advisor about plan giving options. Plan for a gift that keeps on giving. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. All right, so that's that. Thank you very much, valleygivesback.org. And without further ado, I want to introduce an old veteran of the podcast, an old veteran of the Valley Indie office when we were in Ansonia, Mr. Derby, Mr. Sports History here in the lower Naugatuck Valley and beyond, Mike Cannici.
Hey, Gene. How you doing? Good to talk to you.
What's going on, Mike? How the heck are you?
I'm doing well. How have you been? I see you got the new offices now. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, I haven't used it in like 2 years, but I do pay rent. I'm paid up on my rent, but I haven't been to the office at all on Main Street in Seymour, beautiful downtown Seymour. I'm in the old bank building there.
Right.
I think it was Birmingham Bank, and then it was a Bank of America. It's a smaller setup, but it's good for what I have right now. Although just with COVID, and I don't know if I know we exchanged messages, but I just work out of my basement. Right now I'm in the playroom, dining room, and it works just as well. But I do, I think I will still keep the office though. I just like to know it's there, and eventually I'll go back. Because I don't know, I'm a total shut-in at this point. Like you look like, I can tell you're out, you're adjusted to life. You know what I mean? You're probably still exercising and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm falling apart, Mike, after a couple of years of this COVID stuff. I don't know how much more of this I can take.
It's a never-ending thing, man. I'll tell you.
It really is. And for anybody who may or may not know, I don't know how closely you follow like Valley Indie history. For like 2 or 3 years, Mike did the Valley Sports Rewind podcast here at valleyindy.org. Ton of guests. I went and searched Valley Sports Rewind on valleyindy.org today, and just like you did so many episodes there. It's a cool part of history. I'm proud that it happened. I mean, we did it, we didn't do it, then COVID came, and then at the beginning of COVID, nobody could figure out at the very beginning how to do how to make your sound work. We were a little ahead of the game when it came to this online stuff.
Yeah, it was an adjustment. I tried so many different things and I couldn't figure out how to, I thought Zoom, I could do a show, but I couldn't really, you could only do it for 40 minutes. And, I tried different things. I tried GoToMeeting, nothing seemed to work. So it took me a while to kind of find something that worked. So, I could resurrect the, shows.
Yeah. And the reason Mike is on, because I wanted to talk to him, he's been now doing a new program or new channel, I guess, on YouTube, Hometown Heroes, which you had been doing previously for a long time.
Since July of 2015.
2015. And like over the years, from what I remember, you would interview sort of a Valley sports legend sort of exclusively, going through all the decades of all the athletes from various high schools here in the Naugatuck Valley. But I was checking out the page last night. You've expanded this talk show now. Hometown Heroes has really expanded its reach. So talk about it. How's it different from what you were doing before? And then I guess, where can people find it, first of all?
Yeah. Well, first off, you can find it on my YouTube page. It's Mike Cannici. So, all you got to do is type my name in and my page comes right up. There's not anybody else that I know of with that name. So if you type my name, you'll see my shows. I have 2 shows I do now. I do a weekly show called In the Spotlight, which I started doing back in May of 2021. And of course, I have the Hometown Heroes one, which is just a continuation of, when I did it at Comcast Studios. But unfortunately, Comcast isn't going to be open. I think maybe the earliest might be February. So I felt like the shows had to move on, and, I didn't want to wait any longer. We'd almost been out for 2 years. So I talked to Melissa Leonard, and she got me in this new program, and it's really worked. It's really worked out a lot.
You're doing it on StreamYard, right? And the other big.
Yeah. And,
video
the thing is with StreamYard, it's really easy. I mean, basically you go to StreamYard.com, you type in your email address, they send you the link. Then you go back to StreamYard, you put the code in that they give you, and then you're in, and then you could invite, you could have up to 9 guests, counting yourself, that would be 10. So that StreamYard gives you the ability to just do so many things. And that's been the best thing about it, is I wouldn't get some of the guests I've got on recently without this new format.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second, because I remember we had exchanged messages a while back. You had one of the dudes from Happy Days on, right? Talk about that.
Yeah, Donnie Most, who played Ralph Mouth, who was my favorite character on the show. It was kind of funny how that came about, because
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you for a second there, Mike, because I'm 47, right? I graduated high school in 1992.
I'm 45. Yeah.
You're 2 years younger than me. I kind of I have like vague memories of Happy Days when it was like ending, I guess, its original run, because I think it's primarily a 70s show, right? How did you become?
It ended in 1984.
In 84, okay.
Yeah.
So how did you develop this like real fondness for, of all things, Happy Days?
Well, as you know, Gene, when we were kids, I don't know what your TV was like, because you grew up in New York, but when I was in the Valley, you had what was called 1A, I think 1A and 1B, and you flipped it. If you wanted to watch the B side of TV, you flipped to the B switch. If you wanted to watch the A side, you switched to the A switch. So there wasn't many things to watch when you were a kid, but they always had reruns of Happy Days. And my father was a big Happy Days fan. My father grew up as a kid in the 50s, and of course, he went to high school in the 60s. So watching that show was like, reliving his childhood. So he was a big fan from day one, and he got me into it. We'd watch it. I'd watch reruns. And then when it was on ABC, I think it was on Tuesday nights at 8:00 on ABC, I would watch it. So he really got me into it. And I remember being like a 7th grader, maybe the summer of going into my 8th grade year. Reruns were on like 3 times a day, and, I would watch them. So that's how I kind of really loved it.
And so how did you target, what's his name? Donnie Most? Is that what his name is?
Who played Ralph Mouth. If you know
Ralph
anything
Mouth.
about the Ralph Mouth character, he was like the comedian of the show. He's always trying to crack a joke. And he was kind of like that. I said it when I interviewed him. He was like that reluctant hero, because he was really like, I kind of compare him to the Lion and the Wizard of Oz. He was always kind of afraid, but, the Fonzie character always had to kind of give him that kick he needed to do stuff. But I just emailed him, Eugene, and then ironically, I didn't hear back for a while, and then out of nowhere he wrote back to me, and he just said to me, sorry I didn't get back to you soon enough. I was really busy. I've had a busy schedule the last several months. So credit him, because what a great guy, because here I am, I'm not really anything big at all, and he had the decency to write me back. And he literally wrote me back on a Saturday afternoon, and we did the interview that Thursday. So he didn't even make me wait. We did it right away.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, I guess, not to turn this into Happy Days thing, but why not? I mean, and people should go watch the interview Mike did with him on Mike Cannicici's. Now, was that obviously wasn't Hometown Heroes? That was your In the Spotlight?
No, it was Hometown Heroes,
okay.
Because to me, like that was my main show. So even though like it may not have revolved around him and his hometown, to me, I just put it on there because I just thought that would be the right thing to
The
do.
established brand, baby. Well, that's the thing about podcasts, because I did one on the weekends and we called it Mobile Horror Companion. Excuse me, I'm a little verklempt. And so we would talk about horror movies. And I did it with like a screenwriter and then a guy who does horror movie makeup, for like, I mean, he's worked on like all the Netflix shows and all that. But after a while, we're like, we don't want to talk about horror movies. You know what I mean? And now that I'm like sort of a student of podcasts, everybody does that. Nobody just sticks to that one topic because it's just it lacks creativity after a while. But my question, all right, so it was Ralph Malph, right? And who was the other guy? Was it Potsy? Was that his buddy?
Yeah, that was his buddy, because originally Happy Days was to revolve around two friends, Richie Cunningham and Potsy Weber. But what happened was they had decent ratings the first year. And, they kind of had the Fonzie character as a guest star. He wasn't a main character yet. And then season 2, for whatever reason, their ratings really weren't that good, but they were kind of implementing both Fonzie and Ralph into the main cast more. But by season 3, they realized Fonzie had to be the focal point of this show. So they had him move in upstairs from the Cunninghams. Him and Richie became the best friends. So I said this to Donnie on the show. I really credit Anson Williams, because it's never easy when you're supposed to be one of the main characters and you kind of have to take a little more of a supporting role when you were originally supposed to be one of the starring roles. So I give him credit for that, but that's how it originated.
Like the whole show was based on the nostalgia and the critical acclaim and the popularity of American Graffiti, the George Lucas movie. That's Happy Days was sort of born from that. But I remember
which Ronnie Howard was in. Yeah.
But it's like if you watch Happy Days, if you're like about our age, you see the show first. The movie's so different; it's a little jarring because it's not like Fonzie, going over a shark or whatever. But it wasn't like Ralph Malph, and I'll just call him by his character. No disrespect to him, because I have a bad memory. Donnie Most. He was sort of typecast after it. Didn't he have like a problems getting work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. See, the problem is, and Ken Osmond from Leave It to Beaver went through the same thing. Sometimes you play a character so well that it's hard for people to look at you as anything else. Like I always look at the kid, Jaleel, I think Jaleel White, who played Steve Urkel. Could you really, that poor guy, I don't think he could ever do anything again and be as successful, because people are always just going to, identify him as Urkel, So in one sense, it's great because you've made this iconic character that'll last forever. But in the other sense, you're trying to, do different roles, and it's tough sometimes because people just look at you in that one role. And, you've seen other guys who have kind of been able to, they've been more successful with that. Like Ted Danson, he played 3 different characters throughout his life, in sitcoms. Tom Selleck is doing it right now. So some people can, but then there's just some people that, the problem I think with Kenny Osmond is he just looks like Eddie Haskell so much because he played that character that he just was never able to, really do anything else.
It's hard for the public to see him, and I guess casting agents to see him any other than that character. It's like they embody it. It's a weird sort of magic that happens. All right, so you have like this new incarnation of Hometown Heroes and In the Spotlight. In the Spotlight was the name of the other show you said?
That one I try to do more towards like younger athletes, coaches, stuff like that, to kind of give them recognition. I try to make the Hometown Heroes one more about people like, who've kind of impacted their communities, stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be sports, but, sports is kind of the theme around it. But
that's the anchor, right? That's
the In the Spotlight one is just a way of me being able to do a weekly show for people that we could put on a guest, because Hometown Heroes, with editing and everything, sometimes that takes a month to do. So I can't air them weekly. So this
Are they still going to Comcast?
No.
Okay.
I have a great, I have a great producer, and I tell you, this kid is a genius. I met him when he was 15 years old. His name is Michael Jones, and I think he's a senior at Hamden Hall High School. This kid is phenomenal. I've never seen anybody as just gifted as he is with technology. He edits my shows with me. Literally, it takes us maybe 50 minutes at the most to do him. He is just a phenomenal talent. The kid is going to go places in life, and I could see this kid someday. I really believe this. He's going to be like in the video game business, doing something with video games and making a ton of money.
It is crazy. One thing that's sort of scary to me is how good, I mean, I have two kids, but how, the kids, and this is just a cliche and everybody knows this, so I won't belabor the point, but how young people today, this is all just coming naturally, grow up with learning how to edit and how to communicate with, YouTube itself, all the people that are on there, where I'm sitting there stumbling, making sure my levels are correct here, how it's now just such a thing, it's kind of exciting. And it's good to hear that because the last couple of days, I don't know exactly when I'll post this, but I've been just writing nonstop about kids charged with threatening and this kid's charged with threatening. And it gets it's important to note that I don't believe that kids today are bad. I refuse to sort of get into that argument. So it's glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that kids are doing well,
Yeah, I had a high school kid on the Hometown Heroes show, and I just aired it a few days ago. And, she goes to Massac High School, and just a phenomenal kid. She's been through some tough times, but she's overcome them. She's doing great things with grades, cheerleading, coaching, and stuff like that. So, this idea that today's kids are not good kids, that's not true at all. I think social media, you kind of see more of the bad ones maybe than you did in years past. And I don't think there's necessarily a bad kid. I just think kids make some bad decisions sometimes, but there are still, wonderful kids out there. So when people say that, that is very unfair because that's not true at all.
Yeah, it is. And I've been thinking about this all week, not to go off on a tangent. So, but yeah, it's you make a mistake at 14 or 15 now, it's going to be publicized because everything happens and because you're probably making the mistake. You don't think as a kid whose mind isn't fully developed that when you're putting something on social media that it is public. I mean, I've had issues in my own house with my own kids about things they've posted, and you have to sit down. You think it's just your bubble seeing this, but you, one, don't know how it's going to be interpreted, and two, it's going out to the entire world, and three, it's permanent. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot.
When we were kids, if you remember, we didn't have all this stuff. So what did we do? We made prank calls. That was, our mischief. They just have more access to stuff. And it's like you said, they don't.
You can now hear my daughter yelling in the background, by the way. Yeah. Go ahead.
They don't realize the, impact it has, because nowadays, if that stuff gets online, like you said, then you could get in a lot of trouble. But I mean, when we were kids, we did stupid things too. We just didn't have the access that they have now. We used to just make prank calls, or we might, do mischief in the neighborhood, stuff like that. So I just think that's why I don't believe that there's bad kids. I just believe that sometimes, like anything else, and adults do it too, but just sometimes they make bad choices. That's all.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, bomb threats and things like that would happen fairly regularly at schools when I was in high school. But I'm questioning. I don't really remember. Who knows if the police, were even involved in those days. I'm not sure the schools in 1988 were calling up the police when they'd get a bomb threat. It's you'd have the fire department come in and walk around, and then you just go back to class. But it's a complete, I don't mean to diminish the seriousness of this stuff, but it's a completely different world we're living in now, obviously. So anyway, back to the topic at hand, Mike. How many? I was shocked and amazed, but I know your work ethic is pretty insane. You're doing this show a lot. How many episodes have you done? How often do you post?
Like I said, so since May, I've been doing in the spotlights a lot. Sometimes I might do 3 of them in 1 week. If the guest could get on, I'll do, 3 in 1 week, and then I'll air them once a week. So, I'd have to go back and look, but I would say in the spotlights, there's probably in the 30s already. And then the Hometown Heroes, between what I've done at Comcast and what I've been doing recently, I would say if we're not at the hundreds yet, we're close. So, I mean, we've done, I've done a lot of them, and, but the thing is, it's work sometimes, but it's a labor of love. So when you have guests on and they make it so easy for you, you don't ever look at it as really work. It's fun.
Yeah, I saw one. I think you had a guy named Shay on, last name Shay. I didn't catch his first name.
Well, he actually Dan Shay. Yes, he actually interviewed me. He wanted to interview me because he told me, that he felt like I have given so much back. He wanted to give something back to me, which was very nice to do. He's on our Hall of Fame committee. I've known him forever. And I mean, you talk about people who don't ever do anybody wrong. He is like a real great friend too. And he would, do anything for anybody.
I liked how conversational it was. Like you could tell there's something about podcasts when two people know each other and just engage.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you call it a podcast. I'm calling it a podcast. Sorry, but it's a talk show.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Where two people just have a conversation that's not necessarily heavily formatted or structured in a certain way. I mean, that can drive certain people crazy. Some people don't like it. Like I keep rambling about going from subject to subject. That drives some people nuts. But I really liked that episode because you guys are familiar with each other. And it was like, you're just listening to a conversation between two friends. And then just, you're talking about stuff that is just cool to listen to as somebody who didn't like grow up here, has no, firsthand knowledge of anything you're talking about. I still found it compelling. How about, and you talked about this, so I'm just going to rip off Dan Shea. Oh, he's not an attorney, is he? He's not going to sue me for
no.
like intellectual property theft, but he asked you a lot of good questions. He was talking about like, what was your like sort of favorite interview? But I'll just ask, of this new batch that you started in May, like since the COVID era and this version of Hometown Heroes and In the Spotlight, was there a guest or an episode that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I mean, of course, the Don Most one. And, because when you really think about it, that was like, in a lot of ways, an impossible interview to get. He's a guy who's been in Hollywood since probably the early 70s, and he's still doing film. He's still doing stuff. So, I mean, you can't help but be proud at that one, because, I mean, that was just something I really, really wanted to get, and, sometimes you really have to work hard to do this stuff. You got to be disappointed. Sometimes some people are going to tell you no, because I've had some people tell me no, but that one, I was obviously really proud of. Like I said, the one I had with Anne-Marie Field recently, I mean, I was proud of that one because, again, you want to recognize
the Massac high school athlete you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you want to really recognize those young kids who do a lot, because, they give up a lot of their time. And, she did a great job. I mean, she really did for a 16-year-old kid. She handled herself great. And I really, really enjoyed that one. And then I would say, I'm trying to think. There was one I did in the summer. I got to really think about it, but I really enjoyed, who was it? I think I had when I had Ken Pereira's and his softball players on after they won the championship and stuff, it was a lot of fun because they were talking to each other, and I kind of got to just kind of eavesdrop while they had a conversation about their great season. And that's the thing too. I love it when I can ask questions, but then I could kind of just sit back and listen while they tell the story. That makes it really rewarding.
Right. Yeah. And I apologize again. Like I said, I'm in my living room, so apparently my son's having a meltdown at something. I don't know. Jack, something go wrong at Fortnite? I don't know what's going on, but these kids today. Yeah, I'm a fan, so I'm glad to see that it's endured your talk show despite of all the challenges. Hey, what about one that went wrong? Have you ever had? I mean, I've done interviews with people for the Valley Indie and for other places I've worked where my classic one. And I'm sorry to say it's happened more than once where the tape recorder doesn't work and you get back and you realize you have no tape. I mean, I interviewed the star of Clerks, whose name escapes me at the moment. The guy who played Dante. I'm not even supposed to be here today. I interviewed him at like midnight at a horror convention, right? He agreed to do it. We met in like the, the hotel, not the lobby, but a little like cafeteria area. And then like the next day, I hadn't taped a word of it. I had never, it was just a whatever malfunction. So have you had any of those stories?
Well, I could tell you a couple. I think one, if you listen to the interview with Dan Shea, I mentioned with Charlie DeCenzo, where we thought we lost the interview on part 2. And he had done such a great job on that part 2 interview that I kid you not, he agreed to reshoot, but it wasn't going to capture the same moment. And I was really devastated. And I was just like so embarrassed, number one, that it got lost. But fortunately, by, fate, it stayed on Melissa Leonard's computer. It was in her recycle thing, and we were able to restore it. So we got very lucky there. Now I'll tell you a good story. I had, and this is another person I forgot to mention, but I really enjoyed having her on the show too, was Derby. She was a sophomore at the time, Leah Lovington. She's very good at track and has been cheerleading forever. I did an interview with her, and what happened there was she was having a lot of Wi-Fi issues, and every now and then, like, it was freezing a little bit. And when we got done, I said, God, I don't know if I could air this because her thing froze a lot. And then I was still new to like StreamYard. I think she was like my third guest. So I accidentally cleared the interview. So I lost it. So I said to her, Leah, I accidentally deleted it. Would you be able to do it again right now? And she agreed. And we did an hour and there was no problems at all. Her Wi-Fi was better. So that was a blessing because we were able to, do that without any issues. And then not too long ago, I interviewed the Shelton football coach. What was his name? Matt DeFelice or Mike DeFelice. And when I interviewed Mike, he was having a lot of Wi-Fi issues because he was outside. So I asked him later on, I'm like, Mike, we can't do this one because it didn't come out good. Would you be able to shoot it again? Yeah. So luckily,
I'm having heart palpitations because I've been through all these things. It's like,
But I'm going to tell you right now, like, when you bring up the Donnie Most one, and of course I was able to interview Chris Mad Dog Russo, I prayed and prayed that everything would go right in those interviews because that would have really crushed me, like to be able to get somebody like them on and then something goes wrong with the video or the audio or whatever. So, I just kept thinking to myself, let's get through this because like it was going so smooth, and those ones make you nervous because you really don't ever want anything to happen because those are one-time things. That.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so. I'm thinking back to the times we tried it, and we seemed to be cursed for a while. That we would have a third person, and they were like,
we did that one guy. Yeah, we did the one guy.
Remember
Bill Davis, I think,
okay.
And we interviewed him twice, and both times. So I got to get in touch with him because now I could actually interview him again, and everything should go well. But for whatever reason, I felt bad. The guy came from Waterbury, and both times he came, the thing just didn't tape right. And, he was very good about it. He was understanding. He knows that stuff could happen. But, you do feel bad because they did come and do the interview, and twice, what are their chances? So hopefully third time's the charm.
I remember one time I was at the Patent Trader. It was a weekly newspaper where I started in like 1999. And, Patent Trader covered like Mount Kisco, New York, Chappaqua, Bedford, New York. So you get some of like the fan, like DMX who lived in the area. And Stephen Lang lived in Bedford, the guy from Avatar and Tombstone, And I got an interview. I went to his house and I interviewed him and it all went great. He was doing I think he was doing a Broadway play and Quentin Tarantino was in it. It was a whole thing. It was that Audrey Hepburn thriller about the blind woman whose the name escapes me, something Afraid of the Dark or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, after I wrote the whole story, I handed it in, and my editor, for whatever reason, at the weekly newspaper, our style was you couldn't say like, Mike said. It had to be like Mr. Cannici said. It had to have the word Mr. in that. And so like they went in before they published and they just put the word Mr. before his last name and every reference in the article. And it just is like, not to be like a diva writer, but it completely threw off the whole flow of the article. And I was just like, so embarrassed. And then the photo we used, I took a photo and it was before digital cameras. And I had like, it was like a point and click that you drop into like the barrel. And it was just like him really close up. And he actually like wrote me a note being like, really? That's the photo you used? And I felt so bad, so and I got run out of Mount Kisco, New York. And that was that. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, Mike, like when the Valley Indy first launched, we covered sports to the extent that we could. I had a $30,000 freelance budget, and I used it off our initial grant. Our first grant was like $250,000 a year, where we were, we don't have that anymore. But that first 2 years, or 3 years, that's what we had, thanks to the Knight Foundation, the Valley Community Foundation, the Online Journalism Project. But so we thought it was important to cover sports, and we spent a lot of money and resources covering football. Which I look back, I'm like, you know what? It was already being covered. That was a mistake. But to hear this year that the Derby football team, because they had so many young players, couldn't complete their varsity season, how did that strike you as a Derby native and sort of an unofficial historian at this point, and the person who's keeping the glory days and beyond of Derby football alive? How did that hit you?
It was upsetting, obviously, and it was disappointing. And, I think the thing you're disappointed for more than anything else is, you feel for all the players who, played so many years and, gave their heart to Derby football. And you feel bad for those longtime fans, like my father, and obviously is Bill Pucci and guys like that who went to games forever since they were, teenagers. You feel bad because they always enjoy going to those games. You feel bad for fans, obviously, but with that said, I do feel like that these boys gave all they could really give this year, because it's not easy when you're a freshman and sophomore and you have to play varsity when maybe you're not ready to play varsity yet, but you have to do it, to fill the team and stuff. And that's not an easy thing to do. So, I really do applaud them, and really tip my cap to them that they went out there and gave it everything they could. And unfortunately, I know they didn't finish the season, but, you don't want to be getting people hurt either. And, these kids were playing with injuries too. So I really do applaud them for that.
Yeah. And was the reaction, I just linked to different things, but I always get, even with these things going on in the schools about, people, allegedly young kids making threats, and then it happens, you write the story, you put it online, and then it goes into the public sphere where people they go at it sometimes. And then sometimes it's like, well, why would you have to say that in public? And sometimes I question the value even giving of the whole comment section sometimes, because I feel like it doesn't add anything, particularly when it involves young people, So was there any reaction? Did people go nuts on Facebook, I guess, to make a very long question short? Were there any knuckleheads?
You always get a couple that, will say this is a, disgrace or this is that. But I will say that I think most people understood that this was just a very difficult situation. And I think they had 5 games left, maybe 4, but I want to say 5. I think they were 0-5 when they shut the season down. And I think they still had to play Seymour, Ansonia, and Shelton, and Gilbert for that matter. And all 4 of those teams made the playoffs. So you're talking about a team who's, starting freshmen and sophomores, majority of them. They did start a couple seniors, I think a few juniors, but it was mainly freshmen and sophomore. And you're asking them to go out there, play these next 4 games against, 4 teams that are, have a shot at the playoffs. And obviously all 4 made it. So I understood why they had to do it. And, to their credit, I think they still went to practice. I think they played some JV games. I know they played Ansonia's freshman and sophomore team. So they definitely finished the season, even though they didn't finish the varsity season, they still finished the season. And, I thought in the end that was the right way to go, because, they can build on that from next year. They really can. So I don't think the fans were as ticked off as, maybe they might've been 10 years ago.
And again, I didn't follow it closely, but I thought it was nice to see. I think it was WFSB. One of the TV stations came down twice, to sort of cover. Okay, it's not happening part of it, but there was some uplifting story about maybe it was how they still played Ansonia in a scrimmage. So I don't really remember, but it was nice to see the TV come back and acknowledge that.
They played, like I said, they played Ansonia's freshman and sophomore team. I think they beat them as well. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, and hey.
Yeah, so they did defeat them, which I think that was great for those kids. They, that's something they could definitely look at as a big positive for them this year, doing that. But I think, think about this, okay? I'll just think back when I was a freshman in high school, or I'll even say as a sophomore in high school. I wasn't even necessarily ready to play freshman football or even play, JV football. I'm still learning the game and stuff. And you've got kids that were on this team this year that are just learning. Some of them are just learning the game really. And they had to go out there and they had to start and play varsity. That's not an easy thing to do. I mean, that's hard to do.
I would have quit like day one. I would have been, forget this. This is not, but hats off to those kids.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really do give them credit. And they actually had a banquet the other day for the kids. And I really thought that they, the committee for that banquet did a great job and, really, acknowledge those kids and coaches for their efforts this year.
That's cool. And I guess like the last thing my kids are really acting up. I'm going to have to help my wife put them to bed. So I apologize, but and actually my cat is now begging for food at my feet here. I really got to go to that office and see more there. But like now there's we have a new member of the board of aldermen on the city of Derby. And I was sort of like during they appointed Kevin Sharkey last week. And it's, I guess, Sonia High School graduate. He was a standout when he was a player there. And then I saw he was one of the guests on the new iteration of Hometown Heroes, which I found useful. And
I had been trying to get him for about 5 years. I couldn't get the right number for him. Every number I had was never the right one. So finally,
no kidding. He was clearly trying to avoid you, you're saying. I know that.
No. And let me tell you about him, Eugene. Obviously, when he played for Ansonia, you're trained to dislike him because he played for Ansonia, and he was a tremendous football player. I've said this many times. He's one of the best high school football players I've ever watched. But let me just tell you what a terrific human being he is. He is one of the nicest people you will ever meet, and he would do anything for anybody. And to me, him being on the board of aldermen is great for Derby because he will do right by the people in Derby. He will do right for what's right for Derby. And, I was really pulling for him to get on the alderman when he ran. I really was hoping to get in. But now I'm glad that he's going to get an opportunity because I just think he's going to bring great things to Derby.
During that meeting, I'm probably sharing something I shouldn't, but what the heck? Andrew Backlick, the mayor's chief of staff, who played football in Derby High School, I guess back in the day. I was kind of asking, I was like, during the meeting, because I didn't know, I'm a reporter who's only lived in the Valley for I'm only 15 years. So I was like trying to get on deadline. Okay, tell me a little about Kevin Sharkey. I ended up not writing the story until just now because I got behind. But Backlick was pretty funny. He just wrote back and he was like, this is like, I think during the meeting, he's like, well, he's the second fastest. Just know that he's the second fastest guy on the Zoom call right now. I guess insinuating that Backlick was faster than him on the football field. Which just it's funny how those things remain. So it made me laugh, Andrew Backlick, who's leaving. He's leaving Derby City Hall as the mayor's chief of staff.
And I really like Andrew, great guy. He's another one who does anything for anybody. And he's really, he's been great for the town. And I mean, I'm sorry to see him go. I really am, because I do think that he gave you, 100% effort every day in that job. And, I'm going to miss, I'll see him around and that's great, but I'll miss that he's not involved with the town of Derby because Derby needs him.
He's been like as just a reporter, sometimes that role, the chief of staff role in any city that I've covered in like 20 plus years, it can get, sometimes that you get some political people in there that are real political. And they get a little extreme in there and they get a little power crazy. And there's sort of the person in the back room who's like the man behind the man. And they like love that. And so Backlick never like that. Like just probably the least political person I've ever seen in that role. And was just, so he and you got to credit Mayor Zekin for hiring. He brought him in. Yeah. And so anyway, I'm waxing nostalgic about Andrew Backlick. Maybe that's a sign to I don't edit these, so maybe that's a sign to call it a night, Mike. But just let me know when's your next show going to air? Who are some upcoming guests? I know you're so organized. You probably have 19 in the can already.
Yeah, I'm actually believe it or not, I'm going to interview a guy this weekend that I'm really looking forward to. His name is Jay LaPrice, and he's worked off and on at different TV production companies. And I think right now he's currently at the Yes Network. He does behind the scenes stuff there. And he's he's been doing stuff like this for 30 years. So I think it's important, Eugene, to have people on that do the behind the scenes work, because they make it happen. The talk show hosts and, the shows that people air and stuff like that, they do a great job of, doing what they're supposed to do. But these guys behind the scenes make sure that everything is right. Everybody's levels are right. The production's right. Everything is, done, efficiently. And I think it's very important to talk to somebody in that. So I'm really looking forward to that interview, because this guy has worked with so many people behind the scenes and so many people in TV and radio that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that interview, because I think sometimes you have to recognize those people. It's important.
Yeah, cool. That sounds awesome, Mike. So anybody watching or listening or whatever I decide to do with this, you see his name there on your screen. If you're watching this on video, that's how you can find his YouTube page. It's Mike Cannici. Last name is spelled Cannici.
Yeah, good job.
I have a mental block against Mike's last name. I spell it wrong all the time. So there it is. Cannici.
Don't worry.
No, me especially. I don't know why. That was always just a weird thing I have. It's like a mental, it's like, like a tick, but definitely check out his YouTube page. He's doing really well. People are watching, I'm amazed at some of the numbers, the number of viewers, into the hundreds on some of those episodes. That's really awesome. So congratulations, Mike. And I guess on behalf of everybody in Derby and beyond, thanks for all you do for the community.
Well, thank you, Eugene. I appreciate that. And thank you for always supporting me. That means a lot.
All right, brother. Peace out.
Thanks, bud.
For hundreds of years we brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives.